There's been a lot happening lately, so you'd be forgiven for missing the government and coalition joining hands to block an inquiry into legislation that the government sought to push through that will see them build a whole bunch of houses for US troops under Aukus.
At the end of the motion, add "and the following bills not be referred to a committee." Australian Security Intelligence Organisation Amendment Bill No. 1, 2025, Australian Security Intelligence Organisation Amendment Bill No. 2, 2025, Strengthening Oversight of the National Intelligence Community Bill 2025 and Defence Housing Australia Amendment Bill 2025.
If you haven't seen it before, that's what it looks like when a government attempts to push a bill through with minimal scrutiny or public debate.
I move an amendment to Labor's amendment in the terms circulated in the chamber. The amendment that we are moving is that the Defence Housing Australia Amendment Bill 2025 be referred immediately to the Foreign Affairs, Defence and Trade Legislation Committee for inquiry and report by the 28th of October.
As boring as that may have sounded, that's what it looks like when the opposition or crossbench tries to push a government bill to a public inquiry.
I really want to dwell on the Defence Housing Australia Amendment Bill 2025. Now, you can't make some stuff up in politics, but what about this? The last parliament, we saw Labor coming up with a million reasons why they couldn't do anything on public housing. Well, they couldn't help people out on rents, they couldn't do anything, they couldn't build public housing, and they kept saying, oh, it's all the Greens' fault for not supporting their crap bills. So then this parliament, they start with a public housing bill. So well done, Labor. Well done. You bring a public housing bill into the chamber, you push it through the lower house, and do you know what public housing they're building?
What is it?
They're building public housing for US troops under Aukus. That's their public housing bill. Right now, they want to build 700 public housing units over in WA, not to put Australians who haven't got a home in it, not to put renters who can't afford a home in it, but they're building public housing for US troops because Uncle Donald asked them to. Uncle Donald asked them to.
Surely not.
Surely this is not Labor's... surely they read this, didn't they? Didn't somebody in the Labor caucus say our first public housing bill for the new parliament can't be to build the US housing for US troops under Aukus? Surely someone did a sort of reality check, but no, that's their bill. And do you know what? They can't even say how many hundreds of millions of public dollars will be used to build US troops public housing under this bill, and even the coalition were asking some questions about it. Now, the coalition normally wave through anything to do with Aukus, anything to do with the US alliance. They'll wave it through. But even the coalition downstairs asked some little quiet, tentative questions like, oh, please, sir, can you tell us how much money we're going to be paying to build the US troops public housing? Oh, please, Minister, you haven't explained in the bill how much is this going to cost, and is it going to come from the defence budget or is it going to come from some other budget? And when the coalition got no answers, they crawled back into their shell and have gone quiet on it. And that's so typical of this non-opposition opposition. Maybe the problem is the Uncle Donald reference. Maybe it's the fact that the Coalition and Labor are embarrassed about the fact that they're teaming up today to help the Senate ram through legislation to build public housing for US troops under Aukus, because it's a bloody disgrace. It is a bloody disgrace.
Senator Shoebridge,
I withdraw that.
Thank you.
There are already 2,500 US Marines cycling in and out of Darwin. Are we building housing for 2,500 Marines cycling in and out of Darwin? There are already plans to put 700 US troops into the surrounds of Garden Island off Fremantle with all their families. How many houses are we building for US troops in Fremantle under this bill? There's already a housing crisis over there. So we say to both the Coalition and Labor, if you're going to do another stitch-up on Aukus, at least have the guts to do it in public, right? At least have the guts to take this bill to an inquiry so we can find out how many hundreds of millions of Australian taxpayers' dollars are going to build US troops housing under the plan from the war parties, from Labor and the Coalition. Because Aukus is already bleeding us dry. Billions of dollars going to Donald Trump, billions more going to Rolls-Royce in the UK. And now in the first housing bill that Labor brings into this new parliament, they decide to put an unknown number of millions of dollars into building houses not for people in Australia who can't afford them, but for their mates in the US and US troops. It's a disgrace.
Senator Shoebridge is right in what he's saying there. The bill is light on detail. We know the government will be building housing for US troops, but there's no indication of cost, nor where the money will come from. I mean, you can probably assume that it will come out of the hundreds of billions of dollars earmarked for Aukus, but given the lack of detail, we can really only speculate. Hell, maybe the good old Housing Australia Future Fund could foot the bill. I joke. But nah, I joke.
So the question is that the amendment in the name of Senator McKim and moved by Senator Shoebridge be agreed to. Those of that opinion say aye. Against? Aye. The noes have it. Division required. Ring the bells for 4 minutes.
Given the lack of detail around the Defence Housing Australia Amendment Bill and the question marks that still seem to hang over AUKUS more broadly, this one was deserving of some scrutiny, I'd have thought. The explanatory memorandum claims that the amendments in the bill have no financial impact. Now, that seems a bit odd to me, given the whole purpose of the amendment is to provide housing and housing-related services to a whole heap of new people, including members of a military organisation of a foreign country, officials and employees of a government body of a foreign country, contractors engaged by a military organisation of a foreign country, or a government body of a foreign country, including their subcontractors. So yeah, hard to see how providing things that we haven't been providing up until now won't have a financial impact, but...
Order. There being 13 ayes and 31 noes, the matter is resolved in the negative.
And that's what it looks like when Labor and the Coalition come together to push something through with minimal public scrutiny. But when it comes to AUKUS, I guess that's par for the course, given that on that issue, the two majors are largely singing from the same songbook.
Oh yeah!
It's kind of sad, isn't it?
Yeah, I do think that it's pretty sad that the first housing bill the government pushed through in their second term is going to do nothing to help the housing crisis in Australia or put roofs over Aussies' heads. It might speak to the government's priorities perhaps, but it's depressing to see the only real government-built and owned housing that the government is willing to commit to is for AUKUS. It's even more depressing when this is the backdrop that the government's prioritisation of the AUKUS homes is set against.
Homelessness rates, particularly for women and girls, have worsened during the Albanese government's first term in office. Homelessness Australia says data from the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare shows the number of people accessing homelessness services each month has increased by 10% since May 2022. For women and girls, the increase was 14%.
The biggest issue that we face is that there's just not rentals that people can afford. So, you know, the government has made some really welcome investments in social housing, but the reality is that the problem of in the rental crisis has grown over decades, and the commitments that have been made are not enough to keep increasing the proportion of social housing as a proportion of all dwellings. So what we're calling on this parliament to do, this government to do, is to invest more in social housing.
I'm in the middle of pulling together a bit of a deep dive on housing to see what's happened in the last couple of years and to look at where we're heading, so stay tuned for that. Until then...
Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe.